Hello, welcome. My name is Peter Scrivola, Technical Advisor for Patisserie and Chocolate here at Paratos. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to make a vegan chocolate raspberry tart. It's going to feature our VivaFill raspberry, our Tegral Satin Cacao Trace Clean Label Vegan Chocolate Cake, that's a mouthful, some Belcolade Cacao Trace chocolate, and our Ambiente whipped topping. So, the first step for the tart is the Tart Shell. You can find this recipe on our website at paratos.us. The tart crust is a vegan crust, so it's made with margarine, a vegan margarine instead of butter. So you have vegan margarine, powdered sugar, flour, and salt. Blend it together to make a nice crust. It's rolled out to about 3 millimeters. You line a tart crust, bake it at 350 until it's baked through, okay? And then you have a nice little tart crust. For this one, I used a small fluted pan. You can make a large tart, you can make a smaller tart, you can make tartlets. The next step is to use our raspberry VivaFill. So the raspberry VivaFill is our line of fruit fillings. It's a jam-based fruit filling. It's bake stable. It's a really nice product, excuse me, to use in baked items, like I mentioned, Danish, muffins, tarts, cakes, etc. Or it can be used unbaked, raw, like we're going to do today, in a tart shell, in a jelly roll, lots of different options. So we'll use the raspberry VivaFill, put a nice layer on the bottom of the tart. The nice thing about this VivaFill is no artificial flavors, no artificial colors, and it's preservative free. A really nice clean flavor. We have raspberry, wild blueberry, apple, lemon, and apricot. Maybe more to come. So as you can see, here's the raspberry filling on the bottom. And the raspberry filling, it's going to create a little kind of a barrier. It's a very low moisture fruit filling, so it's not going to make the crust soggy at all. Okay. The next step is the vegan cake. What we will do then, I'll show you a quick method on how it's mixed. Very simple. So we have the vegan cake mix in a bowl, water. Again, the recipe is on the website, and oil. We take this, we're going to mix it with a paddle attachment on a stand mixer for 5 minutes at medium speed. Spread it and then bake it at 365 degrees, about 14 minutes or so. Pretend 5 minutes went by and I mixed that, and you have this nice batter here. Okay. Voila. So it's 100% plant-based ingredients in this mix. And it's made with our Cacao Trace cocoa powder, and it is a cleaner label, so it has a shorter and more pronounceable ingredient deck, which is nice. I'm going to show you a quick method on how to spread it nicely. Get a piece of parchment paper, a silicone mat, okay, and this little tool is called a raclette, and it makes spreading cake batter super simple and precise. Someone has asked what Cacao Trace means. It's a great question. So, Cacao Trace is our sustainability program, our cacao sustainability program. And there's two main points to that I will go over quickly. First is teaching the cocoa farmers how to produce quality, really quality cocoa beans, how they grow, how they harvest, and then most importantly, how they're fermented. Okay, and we do a lot of training on making sure that they're producing high quality cocoa beans, which in turn will produce high quality chocolate, such as Belcolade. Also, 5 cents from every pound of chocolate sold of the Cocoa Trace will go back to the farmer. And this equates to about 1 to 2 months' salary back into the farmer's pocket, which is huge. So you can submit questions as we go, and I'll be happy to stop and answer them. So back to the cake. You just spread this little device here, the raclette. You have a nice little even layer of cake. Okay, so it's consistent all throughout. And then voila, we have our baked chocolate cake. Really nice vegan cake. Pretty versatile. Now, our cake's out of the oven. We cut out discs of the cake, the same size as the tart shell. It's the inside of the tart shell. And what we'll do is just place one of the discs of cake inside the shell and press it down so it adheres to the raspberry Vivafil. Okay. The next step to the tart is to make a ganache. Traditionally, a ganache is made with heavy cream and chocolate. Sometimes fat is added, like butter. Sometimes flavorings are added. Sometimes sugar is added, such as glucose syrup or an invert sugar. But usually it's made with heavy cream. In this case, what we're doing is replacing the heavy cream with a puree of raspberry. And we are going to thicken the raspberry puree with a bit of sugar and pectin, and add a little bit of olive oil as well, okay? And that's going to help with the fatty mouthfeel. So in our pot here we have trimoline, which is an invert sugar. An invert sugar is a sugar that's heated with an enzyme to prevent it from crystallizing, okay? And it helps to, in a ganache, it's going to help create a nice emulsion, okay, blending the liquid with the chocolate, and it's going to sweeten it a little bit and also help a tiny bit with the elasticity of the ganache and the mouthfeel. So we're going to put that on the stove to heat. Okay. For the chocolate, for this one, we're using the Belcolade Selection Noir. It's a 55% chocolate, and it is the Cocoa Trace chocolate that I talked about before. What you want to do is just melt it partially in the microwave, so it's not solid. Okay. Once the puree, the raspberry puree, and the trimoline are warm, you're going to add a mixture of sugar and pectin. And the pectin that we use, this is important, it's called NH pectin. So it's a pectin that does not require a lot of sugar in order for it to set. It sets with calcium instead of sugar, which is in the raspberry puree. So we add that to the puree. And then olive oil, add that as well. So the chocolate features 100% cocoa butter, so there's no other added fats, and natural vanilla flavor, natural vanilla. We have a lot of, Belcolade has a line of single origin chocolates that are really nice. We just released a Papua New Guinea chocolate, which is really delicious. It's a dark chocolate, I believe 73%, 70%, somewhere around there. So our raspberry puree with the pectin and the olive oil, the sugar, trimoline, it's just about at a boil. It's important that you bring it up to a boil in order for the pectin to set. And the pectin, someone asked what the purpose of the pectin in the raspberry puree is. That's going to help with the texture. So it will help thicken the ganache a bit. Because we're using a puree instead of a heavy cream or fat, we need to thicken it up a little bit more. Okay? Again, you can submit questions as we go, and I'll be happy to answer anything you have. If I can't answer them right away, I'll just make it up, and so you can. If I can't answer it right away, you can go ahead and just send us a message. Send us a message to Instagram, and we'll be happy to research it and get you an answer. So we're at a boil. We're going to pour it over the chocolate. Okay, and then with a whisk, you just want to blend the ingredients together. Make sure that the chocolate is fully melted from the hot raspberry puree. Can you see that? Perfect. Okay, so then you have a nice smooth mixture, smooth ganache of raspberry puree chocolate. One little trick that we like to do is emulsify it some more with the hand blender. Okay. So someone asks why we use the blender. The immersion blender is going to help to emulsify the liquid with the chocolate. Okay, and it's going to help create a nice smooth ganache as opposed to just using a whisk or a spatula. So now we have our ganache in a piping bag, and we're just going to pipe it on top of the chocolate cake in the tart shell. So someone asked if you can make a tart if you don't have tart shells at home. You can buy pre-made tart shells online. I'm pretty sure, although I'm not positive, but you could probably buy vegan tart shells as well. But you could certainly use the pre-made tart shells. Makes it very easy for production, and you could be very versatile in your offerings to the guests. So you can have a wide variety of tarts without much labor by buying the pre-made tart shells. So at this point, you can just give the tart a little bit of tap, a little tap tap. It's going to help the ganache flow around the chocolate cake and settle in all the cracks, all the little crevices there. You could also use a spatula. So. Now you're going to want to let the ganache set up. So you can set it at room temperature, just a few hours at room temperature until it cools down. You don't want to add the topping yet because the ganache is still hot. If you add the whipped topping, it will just melt and it won't be nice. So made a few earlier. Okay, as you can see now the ganache is set. It's dried out. It's set up nicely. Okay. The next step for the tart is to top it with the cream. So if you look inside, the tart here, you can see we have the tart crust on the bottom. We have a layer of the raspberry Viva Fill. We have a layer of the chocolate cake, and then a layer of the ganache, and then a layer of the whipped topping. Okay, and it's kind of hard to see the chocolate cake because what happens is because we pour the ganache hot, a lot of it gets absorbed inside the chocolate cake. And so you have a nice varieties of textures when you bite into your tart. You know, really nice, light, fluffy topping, smooth, creamy, a little bit of chew and elasticity from your ganache, your cake layer, and then finally you bite into that Viva Fill raspberry and the crunchy tart. So you have a nice selection of textures and flavors going on. So it's a nice tart and 100% plant-based vegan. Someone asked a question if there is an alternative to letting the ganache set at room temperature. There is. You could throw it in the refrigerator. So if you put your tart in the fridge for an hour, half hour, your ganache should set up. It doesn't have to be 100% set. It just has to be cooled down enough so that your whipped topping won't melt. Okay. So a bit about the whipped topping. It's a product from Parados called Ambiente. So it's a vegetable-based cream. There's no dairy, no animal fat in it whatsoever. So it is 100% vegan. It's just a mixture of fat and sugar, flavoring and emulsifiers. And you refrigerate it. It comes in a 1 kilo carton. You keep it in the refrigerator, pull it out, whip it as you would whipped cream, heavy cream, to make a really nice, light, fluffy topping. Okay? So it has that flavor, the texture, the visually looks like whipped cream. So it's a really nice product. It's very versatile too. You can use it for cake decorating. We have a colleague from Costa Rica, a technical advisor, named Alex Sanchez, and he is a world-class cake decorator using vegetable creams. So he'll use the Ambiente, and I've seen a video of him piping a dragon on top of a cake using Ambiente in, I believe it was 8 minutes. So if you can imagine how intricate and how detailed it is to pipe a dragon using whipped topping, it's pretty, it takes some skills. I certainly couldn't do it. So someone asked if you can use other fruit flavors or other fruit purees in the ganache, which is a great question. And yes, you can, as long as they're going to go well with chocolate and they're not too acidic. So if you're going to use, let's say, apricot would be a really nice substitution for raspberry, or you could use passion fruit. If you use passion fruit, you would use maybe half of puree, half water, okay, because the passion fruit will be a bit too strong for the chocolate. Same with any type of citrus like lemon or lime. Be really nice. Cherry also is a really nice flavor with chocolate. So after we have our topping, our whipped ambiente on top of the tarts, we're going to decorate it with some fresh raspberries and some chocolate curls. So you can also, another method is you can use a spatula and just kind of cover up any of the ganache that's poking out. But for this one, I like to leave a bit rustic. You could pipe it on. You could pipe nice, pretty rosettes or nice swirls or flowers on top. But for this, we will leave it a bit rustic. You could also do a much smaller layer of the whipped topping, a thinner layer, and use more raspberries. This is another alternative. So with the raspberries, what I like to do is leave them like they've fallen off the raspberry bush onto the tart. Not quite every one looking exactly the same. Some upside down, some right side up, some on their side. It creates a little bit of visual texture to the tart. And it doesn't look so machine made. It looks a bit more, has more of an artisanal kind of homemade feel to it. Another nice little trick that you can do with raspberries for a tart like this or any kind of tart is you can fill the cavity of the raspberry with a bit of ganache. Okay, so it ends up being a nice little surprise inside of the raspberry. Or you can fill it with a raspberry Viva fill. So again, you have kind of like a little explosion of the fresh raspberry and then the nice raspberry jam on top inside the raspberry. So I made earlier some chocolate curls using the Belcolade tempered chocolate. Spread it onto a marble countertop. Use a comb to cut streaks or lines through the chocolate, and then I'll use a scraper to scrape curls, and you end up with nice little chocolate curls here. Okay. So someone had a question, what are some other toppings that go well on tarts? That's a good question. So for a tart like this, whatever you put on top of the tart, in my opinion, it should resemble what you're putting inside the tart. It should give the consumer an idea of what's inside. So if you have raspberries on top of the tart, you should have raspberry inside the tart. So if I were to put blueberries on top of here, in my opinion, it wouldn't quite work well because you have raspberry on the inside and blueberry on the top. But certainly if you wanted to, for a tart like this, any type of nuts would be nice. Pistachio or almonds would be really nice with this, just toasted or lightly caramelized. But again, you want to kind of resemble a little bit of what is going on inside the tart, give the consumer a little hint of what's inside by what is on top, if that makes sense. So again, you can find this recipe online at parados.us, and you can buy products 24/7 off of the website at parados.us. You can follow Parados US on Instagram, which you are if you're watching, hopefully, Twitter and Facebook to keep track of future live events, Instagram feeds, or our MyLink platform for digital services. So that concludes our demonstration for today. Again, nice vegan chocolate raspberry tart featuring our vegan chocolate cake, our raspberry Viva Fill, some Belcolade cacao trace chocolate, and Ambiente topping. Thanks so much for joining us. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you all soon. Take care.